So, yeah, I'm just going to say a little bit about the context of what we're doing here. So, we've got Lucy and Michaela from Bethlem Gallery.
Hello.
And they asked us to kind of do some Talkaoke and some of our other things in order to really sort of explore this area of mental health justice. And we added creativity into that because we're artists. So we last month at Ortus, which is connected to the Maudsley, we had a Talkaoke. If people don't know what Talkaoke is, this round table that I'm in is normally populated with people sitting around the outside. And we just get a conversation going. We had a really nice conversation last month about some of these subjects. But the thing about Talkaoke is it's not really directed. It's about going with the flow and finding out what people have got to say and where they want to take the conversation. And it's a very creative conversation. And we started to come up with some ideas for really the way we wanted to address this is we wanted to kind of collectively, with all the people that we spoke to last month, all of you people here, and the people we're gonna do this again next week at the same time. We wanted to kind of collectively develop a proposal for an art commission to actually respond to this question of mental health, justice, creativity. And I guess things have changed a lot since last month. The coronavirus was out there, but it just seemed to be so far away. Something happening in China that we were watching on the news. And obviously things have changed a lot since then. It kind of seems obvious now what was going to go down, but at the time it wasn't such a big part of the conversation. But anyway, one of the things we were doing is we were, in response to the conversation, Rick, who's here in the studio with me, where he's mostly socially isolating from me, but that's nothing unusual. But he's actually created a series of visualizations based on the last conversation. He does that live. So last month, when people were talking, he was creating these images instantly. What we're going to do today is go through those images just to start the conversation going, just to see, really, you know, just to kind of like get the whole thing up and running and see, you know, what people have got to, how people respond to that. And bear in mind that the kind of idea for the flow of this is to come up with some kind of proposal. It doesn't even have to be a real thing, but we're trying to develop the proposal as a kind of response to this whole discursive area. And the idea is we keep it nice and open, so we keep that creativity going and get some new insights into this whole field. And we've got a really mixed group of people here. We've got a lot of artists, we've got medical people, we've got just general punters and friends and my mum. So we've got a nice mixed group of people. So yeah, Rick, do you want to just like start flicking up some of those images just so we can get the ball rolling on this? And I just want to say as well, welcome to some of the people that have joined later while I've been doing this spiel. So these are some of the images. We're going to flick through fairly quickly. So imagine this is part of the flow of the conversation that we had last week. Maybe not that quickly though, Rick. Maybe just you're going a bit too fast there. So the first one, without justice, there can be no peace. This is about the William Blake mind forged manacles. Do we actually? There's someone on the phone just outside. Maybe they could.
We can't really hear them.
We can't hear them. Okay. That's,
yeah, we can't hear them.
Maybe that could double up as the sort of background noise that we had earlier on. So yes, that's the idea that the mind, you're in a way you're kind of imprisoning yourself in the mind. Also, Margot, if you want to add some of this, because you took the notes from the last session as well. If you want to add anything, interject any of the points into this. This is like, in a way, a potentially new idea for as a kind of proposal. This is one thing that we thought might be quite good as a proposal, and it's this idea of this kind of art police. But what that means is kind of up to you. It was really some sort of like, could you have a kind of pro-social force that was out on the streets that could intervene, but connecting people, acting creatively to actually boost people's mental health rather than being a kind of restrictive force that actually prevented people doing it.
But I think also what people were saying last month, because it's been a month since we did
exactly a month. Yeah.
People were talking about art as a word that being like quite alienating, and also, you know, what does art mean in general? Somebody mentioned artist Joseph Beuys, and by the way, please make full use of the chat. If there are any points that you want to like make notes or just bounce something out using chat, please do that too. But yeah, somebody was saying about Joseph Beuys using society and us as individual people or collective group as an art material.
Yeah, I mean, I think both these words are particularly loaded, art and police. So in a way, if we were going to make this as a proposal, it wouldn't be art police, but you know, fill in both art is difficult and police is. Rick, do you want to flick to the next one? Because I think this was like, this in a way is the other side of this, that art can be alienating and police can be alienating. So it's like, who are these art police and what actually is their role, and what even should they be called? Because we don't necessarily like the idea of art police. Do you want to flick through to the next one, Rick?
That's a loaded one, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they're all loaded, and a lot of this is just down to interpretation as well. Wasn't
that about because we kind of like replaying some of the conversations in our minds, but I think there was a lot of talk about, you know, the relationship of mental health with justice and also with the system, how the system that we live in, maybe capitalism.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like how the system, the matrix, let's call it, actually creates our perspective, our values. And, you know, I guess this is a writer that is is that right, Rick? Is that what this is about? Can you remember? Yeah, who is the author? Is the system in a way the author? Or, you know, are we actually just kind of vessels for the system? Yeah, was there a point from someone? Okay, this is kind of, yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to say that much about this one. I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I would just say that it was interesting, and I think we'll come to the next image to kind of explain more about it, but we were talking about different perceptions of something like, maybe, let's say, insanity, and how for an artist it sometimes is actually like a necessary condition maybe in order for them to produce good art, but obviously they probably won't get famous until they're dead. We were talking about Van Gogh, which I think why the sunflowers are there. And sometimes we talk about artists and the art form and like, oh, they're such a brilliant advocate for mental health. Somebody mentioned Jimi Hendrix, who actually did sadly die. I think, if you know about this, correct me, but I think he...
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of kind of well-known art, creative people that suffered an incredible amount. And, you know, it's a question... I think somebody said on the table, if you were Van Gogh, would you rather have a life of suffering only to be famous after you died, or would you rather have a more kind of healthy mental state and not be such a famous artist? We've got Ashley with a raised hand. Have you got something to say there?
Yeah.
Or are you just practicing that you still got your raised hand up from before?
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because if we look at history, and we're talking specifically at the moment about painters as opposed to art in different mediums as well, but I think across the board you have people who are celebrated hugely. So the spectrum of things are either you're down and out, or you have celebrity, which is what we're encountering now. And it's interesting because we're at a point, I'm a theatre artist, where we have equity and has been working for years to stabilize those things for people and get them basic things like a pension, or to get compensation when it's needed. And as an artist who makes around about maybe 24,000 a year to less than 5. I mean, that's the kind of balance you can have in a year. It's interesting because I don't think it's got to do with money necessarily, but it's to do with how people treat you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you think there's quite, I mean, this question to everybody, because I guess we've got all different art forms, but I think particularly it's interesting from a point of view of a performer or theatre maker, where there's so much depending on your mental health as well, the kind of resilience they have to exhibit in order to, or, you know, embody in order to embody other characters. And the, like you say, without pensions, without regulating that strand, you know, of industry, it may be quite hard to have that. But we've got some,
yeah, I think it's sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I'm just going to go through the images first, because I think there's a lot of response, but I know we've got to get through these images, and I'm just a bit worried. I mean, this is quite an evocative thing, but I just want to get through all the images, and then we'll just see where this conversation goes.
Great.
But I mean, it's already, I think I can see a lot of raised hands. Kieran and Thomas, you got your hands up there. But what we'll do is we'll just go through. Rick, do you want to just flick through some of these things? And then this is about, I mean, in a way, I can't remember exactly what this was about, but it was about insanity fashion. And there were so many different elements to this. Is it like fashionable to be crazy, or to be somehow have some kind of psychiatric condition, or is it about just the fashion itself being a kind of psychotic industry? I'm not actually 100% sure. I can't remember. And in a way, this process is about you taking what you want from these images as well. Let's go on. What are you going to say, Margot?
I was just going to say it was also, I think, related to a point about some maybe Instagram influencers and people who are.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, they represent an issue because they have an experience of it, and then they become celebrities within that genre, and they shape the conversation around it. But are they doing good job raising awareness, or are they just perpetuating the self-promotion and kind of stardom and celebrity, which is what Sean mentioned earlier?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot here about this idea that we live in the world that is kind of psychotic in itself. Anyway, now I'm talking too much, and let's just go through the images, and we'll just
get on. Come on, then we can all talk.
Thank you, Kieran. So this one, once again, I think self-explanatory. I think it kind of it's got more resonance now probably than it did a month ago with everything that's going on. I think we talked a lot about this kind of, you know, in a way it's quite, we're talking a lot about being life and death, and, you know, the state of being for everybody. Let's flick through and get this conversation going. Once again, I think that's quite self-explanatory. Let's move to the next one. So this is another one that we thought as well that could be, you know, fruit for a proposal. This is about a kind of global anxiety. And I think that once again, this has become more relevant a month later than it was then. But we were hearing a lot about how young people were suffering from climate anxiety, and it was like a huge kind of global kind of global anxiety that so many people had, and yeah. Oops. Okay, I've got the chat up now. So yeah, so this is about a kind of a global anxiety. That was more about climate a month ago, but I think there's other global issues that are big now. Okay, right. Let's move on. Let's flick to the next thing. This is based on a report that there is a death cafe where people can sit and talk about death. And it's about, once again, about this idea that, should we be a little bit more in touch with the idea of death? Okay, let's move on quickly.
I think we all are now.
What was that?
Oh, I was just saying, I think we're all, we are all facing it now, I think.
Do you think we're coming a bit closer to the idea of talking about death? Are we? But anyway, we'll park that for now. This is about, I guess, different personalities, different personas that you might adopt in different situations. Also on social media, we've got on the left-hand side your Instagram face, on the right-hand side your Twitter face. But that's just my interpretation. Let's just flick through, and that's it. Okay. So now Rick's going to be listening to the conversation. We're all back in the room, and there were a lot of points, obviously, there, and there's a lot of things. I think that there was a few kind of raised eyebrows. So where do people want to take it? In the meantime, Rick is going to be, I think, it's the Facebook Live thing not happening at the moment. So Rick's going to be working on that. But in the meantime, does anyone want to get the ball rolling with this? Any thoughts, comments, suggestions, ideas?
Maybe Kieran and Thomas, you had your hands up for like...
Yeah, Thomas, you've had your hand up for a while.
That was just the point about the Van Gogh and homeless man, that in a sense it's not as accessible to some people who don't know the background of Van Gogh. They wouldn't necessarily make that connection. And that with all of these artworks, it would be good if there was some kind of explanation or some sort of text or something, whether it be audio or something to go along with it to sort of unpack the context. So I'm the sort of guy that loves art. When I go in and I'm on the tour, and there's a tour guide who kind of explains the time and the context and everything, but I'm not a very creative person. I wouldn't necessarily understand it and join the dots. So alongside whatever it is that we go ahead with, I would say, could we have some other kind of media to go along with it, an audio guide or just something that would be.
So there's not enough explanation to guide you through. It's almost like it's usability. Art's usability is not because there's no real indication of how to actually interact with it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm one of the people that run the service user group, the Mental Health and Justice Study. And we've had a look at some artwork ourselves in the past. And that's some of the feedback that members have brought back, that in a sense, the world of art can be just as inaccessible as text, as academic papers, as all those other kind of mediums.
And why do you think that is?
I think because people work in different ways. Like I say, if you don't know who Van Gogh is, and if you don't know that he painted sunflowers, you don't have any of that background, then it doesn't make sense to you. In just the same way that if you're reading an academic paper and you don't understand what longitudinal or, all these other words
what a longitudinal study is, for example.
If you don't understand what that is, then it's gobbledygook.
Okay, so how do we make this more accessible? Sean, go on. Do you want to?
Well, I just wanted to...
Sorry, Kieran had that hand.
Oh, sorry. Actually, Sean, let me just go to Kieran. Go on.
Oh, mine wasn't quite on that point. It was probably going back.
Well, let's just throw some things out there and we'll see where this goes.
All right. I was going to say that basically I don't really believe in good mental health and bad mental health, because from what I can see, it's a kind of range of highly functioning individuals and highly unfunctioning individuals. And most of us are sort of in the bottom lot that I know, but somewhere between functioning and not functioning. And
okay, so there's a kind of axis. It's not just about good and bad, but it's about functioning and not functioning.
yeah, and mental health as well.
Yeah.
Good mental health, and able to sort of contribute a lot. Not such good mental health, still able to contribute.
Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit about how Sean earns 5,000 to 20,000, not because he's not mentally able, but there are lots of people, I think, that basically need a minimum income to function in life. And the highly functioning ones can go out and work and do all that. And a lot of the less functioning ones tend to...
Yeah. But when you're talking about functioning, are you talking about just simply earning money, or are you talking about something
as others, they can't.
Yeah, something else. Is there more to functioning than just simply earning money?
It's complicated, isn't it, Mikey? As you know, but I mean, if we just talked about, whether they can do a full-time job or not would be a start. Then a lot of people can't. But they do a part-time job, they're fucked. So they have to go on benefits. So because we've got this system in place, which is like you're unemployed or you're employed. And I think a lot of artists fall into that category. I mean, a lot of artists I know can't get out of bed before 11, and it doesn't matter what you say to them. That is who they are.
Right. Okay. So in a way, what I'm going to take from that is we need not just about good and bad mental health, but I think with functioning and not functioning, to me, it's more than one thing. And maybe somebody else wants to sort of say what that could be, or add to that conversation. I just want to say as well, we've got.
I would love to add.
I have something to add.
Oh, go on.
Yeah, well, one of the images that really provoked me was the girl sitting in the top of the world, because I think in terms of mental and anxiety, I think that they kind of go a little bit hand in hand at some points, that you get provoked to a point of anxiety. And I think there's a real thing in this world where we're so used to instant gratification now, and we're now buffering up against bigger world global problems that aren't going to be solved in an instant. And we're really getting that lack of communication skills taken away from everybody because of these little devices and stuff,
right. So
where we can actually focus our attention.
So it's a totally global problem. How does that help the individual? These are some questions to everybody. Let me just bring in Oriana on this.
Yeah, I was just going to say about this question of a spectrum of mental health, like functioning and not functioning, and just bring up the example of shyness, because shyness is obviously, it could be pathologized and termed social anxiety. And you could make the assumption that shy people aren't good with people. They might have difficulty gaining employment because they're thought of as, hiding or not out there enough, not gregarious enough or whatever. So, but it could be that actually they're very good with people. They're just inhibited in some way. So I think that it's hard to, make it a binary thing. So, you know what I'm saying? It's like, just because you're shy doesn't mean you're not good with people, or you're not going to be functioning in a certain role like you could.
Okay, so that in a way there's certain...
or it could be that you're particularly good at some things because of that shyness.
But some of these things we consider to
pathologize it, or we could recognize.
When you say pathologize, what do you mean?
Well, it's like social anxiety is in the DSM, right? It is a...
so it's a psychiatric...
It's a psychiatric condition.
So being
right,
shy becomes a psychiatric condition.
Right, so we assume it's something that is treated and therefore should be treated. Like people should not be shy. People should not have social anxiety.
Yeah.
But then there's all, there's obviously people who advocate for shy pride, which is kind of paradoxical thing.
Maybe that's something that Rick could visualize, shy pride.
Well, there's Hamza Hassan has written a book about it called Shy Radicals, so I recommend that to anybody who is interested in.
Okay, let me bring in Margot here. Hang on, Margot.
I just want to come in for all the new people who have joined, and for you as well, to remind you of the raised hand function. It works really well in harvesting the points. So if you go to your bottom of the screen panel, go to participants, you've got all the functions displayed there. So if you want to make a point, that makes it easy as well. So feel free to use that function. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, yeah, that is kind of handy because
and you can
I've
lower
got like 25 people now that I'm trying to work out who to go to next, and I want to bring in new people all the time. So
I mean, Andy made a point on the chat, so I don't know, Andy, if you want to say something a little bit more about the universal basic income.
Okay, go on, Andy. Hang on.
Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry, the space bar was just taking a couple of extra seconds. Yeah, I suppose my kind of contribution to what was getting talked about then would just be to think about, what the actual sort of security net or safety net for people is that would help reduce that sort of social anxiety or feeling of like a lack of bandwidth to deal with anything. I think it's quite interesting that, with the coronavirus outbreak, that's kind of come much more into like mainstream discourse of like, people aren't able to deal with an extra, sort of crisis to deal with, because actually people are just sort of in a very precarious situation.
So it comes back onto Thomas's point in a way that, or no, Sean's point, sorry, that we're at this kind of global anxiety kind of peak, and this has kind of pushed us really almost over the edge. And was that a little thing of the shy pride there, Andy? You got?
Yeah, I've got the Shy Radicals book next.
Oh, Shy Radicals. Okay. So we're all talking about shyness here. Let me just bring Thomas back in. What was your point, Thomas? Let me just hang on. Yep. What was your point?
Oh, sorry. Have I still got my hand held up?
Okay.
You can lower your hand after you've made a point.
Lower your hand. And Kieran, have you got another point to come in?
Yeah, just one point. I think it's interesting that the government have guaranteed the wages of workers around the sort of, I don't know what the figure is, it's over 2,000, isn't it? Just over. So they somehow think that everyone else deserves that amount of money when they're in crisis. And until now, everyone else has been told 75 quid a week will do. So it just goes to show that what we actually really believe is that people need about £2,000 a month to live on. So that's all. That's the only comment.
Okay, I think I saw a lot of nods. I think everyone agrees with you, apart from the people maybe writing the checks, who might disagree. So, I mean, what has changed now so that we can suddenly have all this money to spend on people's well-being, essentially? What has changed, and will we be carrying on with this? And how will this help our sense of creativity or our well-being if we do carry on like this? I mean, what is life going to look like afterwards? There's a point there from you, Kane. Try the raised hand function as well, maybe.
Yeah, we've got points from Lucy and Sean pending.
Okay, right.
And from the outside of the UK perspective, the pack may give us insights. So get ready.
Yeah, should I speak?
Go on, Kane. Off you go.
I guess my question would be, coming from a background in fundraising for the arts, and having seen, obviously the support that's recently been announced from Arts Council, but then on the other side of the coin, some of the other major arts funders coming back to organisations in the past few days to ask them to really think if what they're applying for is important at this moment in time. I guess, where does that put culture and creativity, which I think are, hugely vital in terms of addressing issues of mental health and confronting that through work? Where does that put us in the sort of world of things that are important?
I mean, what are you saying, Kane? Are you saying that the Arts Council should be focusing on this question of people's mental health when they're in this kind of lockdown situation? And they should be funding these kind of things for artists to do, or just keeping artists going and giving them money so that they don't just starve to death? What are you saying here, Kane?
I guess I'm saying is to what role does the arts play in terms of helping, I'd say, the general population's mental health at this moment of time. Just as in
And what would you say?
I would say there's a need for creativity and a need for sort of personal connection and liveness that I think the arts can offer. Just as in there's a need for health and physical activities,
So there's this liveness and this connection that we need to, I mean, I certainly can concur with that. Hopefully we're doing a little bit of it today. Lucy, what was your point? Oops, hang on, sorry.
Artists are very good at problem solving. So in this sort of day and age, we need them. But I was also thinking about, Kane, what you were talking about with the Arts Council, because I was talking to Michaela earlier, who I think's here too, but about, we were bringing up this idea of trust, because the Arts Council have clearly sort of basically said when it comes to evaluation, they've stepped back from kind of worrying about the numbers and saying, yeah, all right, arts institutions, we trust you to just get on with it and do what's right, which is obviously a really nice thing to hear.
Once again, is it one of those things that should have been there in the first place?
Exactly, and kind of that idea of being trusted and acknowledging that you know what's important and what to measure, how to measure your own, how well you're doing and then who you're doing it for.
So do you think before, like the Arts Council, and maybe their metrics of what is a successful project was a little bit wrong in terms of like that it was kind of very standardized? Or
I think it's sort of, you can understand why they're doing it, but I'm not sure what the gain is from it. Like, what, if you want numbers, then why, and what do those numbers mean?
Yeah.
And I think numbers are important sometimes, but you've got to think about who are those numbers? What are they representing? And
I'm an individual, not a number.
Yeah. And Michaela's popped something up about them stopping policing, so it brings up that whole sort of art police idea of
could the art police go and take to the streets now, or is it too much of a danger in these current times?
The police are the only ones on the street.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let me bring in Margot. Go on.
I just wanted to just remind new people. Hello, new people. There's loads of people joining. Remember, if you even got a micro point you'd like to raise, just raise your hand. Go to the participants. You'll get a drop down of everyone who's participating in the conversation. You can lower or raise and then lower your hand. I just wanted to say that Sean was next to speak, but just about Arts Council and how other countries do stuff is I recently heard that my friend's friend got a grant from Finnish government to practice as an artist for 10 years. That's 10 literal years to crack on, be what they are, just do things how they do it. And coincidentally, and until somebody proves me otherwise, Finland has got good mental health
really?
Like across the piece. So,
okay, well, interesting ideas here. I mean, are we basically saying that we just want loads of money to get on with being creative? I think that's what we're saying. But let me come to Sean. Sean, what was your point?
I think it's something to do with stability, isn't it? Like a lot of things that I've been experiencing within myself, and unfortunately that's kind of the viewpoint I'm going from, is environment. If the environment isn't stable, then that often has an immediate impact on your mental state.
Yeah.
And as an artist, specifically an actor, you are, as a person, seen by a lot of people as an instrument, and you're disposable.
Right.
And you go from audition to audition, and even when you get a job, you're probably going to get fired of it because the run only has like a year at most, or 4 years, but it will end. And
so I just lost you there a little bit, Sean. Right.
Which bit did you lose me on?
Yeah, we heard about as an actor, you're kind of like this instrument, and you do a job, and then I didn't hear the last bit. I don't know if everyone else heard, but I certainly didn't.
Right. So you're kind of disposable, and at the end of it, even if you do a good job, you know you're going to get fired because there's certain amounts of yeah. So it's that kind of thing of and also if you
as an actor, you're kind of like this instrument, and you do a job, and then I didn't hear the last bit. I don't know if everyone else heard, but I certainly didn't. So someone got their Facebook Live on. Is that me?
No, that's me. Sorry.
Turn the Facebook Live off if you're on Zoom.
That was amazing.
Loaded up.
I am going to go crazy. I am going to go crazy hearing myself. Okay, hopefully got that point now. Paul, what are you going to say?
Just before we bring in Paul, I just wanted to say, because I'm monitoring the Facebook Live and there's a point from Abby, I will just read it out and then maybe we'll discuss it later. But Abby is saying the Arts Council are only helping the NPOs, National Portfolio Organizations, and other places that have already had funding in the past. And therefore, the trust is given already, surely? ?
Okay, so are we actually helping the wider range of artists there? Not just the ones that are already in with the Arts Council, which, as we all know, is just a very small number compared to all of the creative people out there. Okay, Paul.
Yeah, well, I guess I was just picking up on that point because we are a recent new NPO, so we are very lucky at this moment to have this security with it. But I remember when we were doing some of the stuff around the new strategy, I was really interested in that idea of whether Arts Council could invest in artists over a long period of time. There is this kind of sense that you automatically have to create a structure to do something, and that structure creates this whole layers of bureaucracy or systems in place to do it, and always the artist is further down the line with all that.
Is it just leading to more anxiety in a way, because it's like this kind of continual precariousness anxiety?
Well, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think personally, because I'm involved in an NPO running it, I'm really conscious that we're in this lucky position. We can honour some of the stuff that we're doing with artists, but actually also it just shines a light on the fact that is the bit that's secure, and then all the stuff, the artists that are doing the interesting creative work, and we're almost like a conduit, which I know is really important, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't be, but I think it just create this kind of weird imbalance that's kind of being highlighted now at the moment. And it's like almost like we're talking about how we put our energies into kind of supporting that and using our status that we've got as security to support that process. But yeah, I think something, it's a shame that it hasn't happened yet, but maybe something that's going on now will force that kind of rethinking of where money should be going.
Okay, I mean, do we need a total rethink of how we fund art? Is that what we're saying here? Because I feel like everyone is kind of saying it, but I mean, where's the money going to come from? Is it just about shaking the magic money tree until the money falls out? And it's a good thing to spend money on because it seems to be so connected to our mental health.
Chat going on the chat about the current help, the help the Arts Council, sorry, can't get my words out, is offering in shape of small grants to organizations and to individual artists. And hopefully, Oriana, you can do the raised hand. That really pleases me. We had a side chat here about that, but there are some more points from Kieran and Andy with the raised hands. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, all right, let's go over to Kieran first of all. Go on.
It's just a very quick comment, which was that one of the things that people are quite glad about is that Oxford Street is closed and we're not shopping and we're not consuming, and we're taking a break from it, and now we're rethinking the economy a tiny bit because it's supporting. And my hope is, I mean, I'm not an economist. My hope is that the arts is the way that we should be consuming. We should be buying stuff all the time. We should be enjoying each other's company with stuff we produce. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. Obviously you're going to have to engage people. And I think there's a possibility of a whole huge economy coming from that. But I don't think the government will put the money into it. It's going to have
maybe that's something that Rick could visualize, is like an Oxford Street, not full of shops, but full of artist activities and galleries and cultural stuff. Tables. Talkaoke tables, of course.
Yeah, every 100 meters.
Yeah. Rick, there you go. There's one for you to visualize. Let's move on to Andy.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was just kind of thinking about that magic money tree idea, that obviously there's some sort of kind of benefit to lobbying for the way that money should be distributed differently. But also, what's the kind of capacity for people, especially in a crisis, to be looking at alternative ways of supporting each other, different sorts of mutual aid, different ways of kind of creating resources and sharing those as well. And that's kind of been happening within the, whatever you want to call it, artist-led sector, or sort of like DIY cultural scenes or whatever, for a long time. So, I mean, now's quite a good time to sort of take stock of that and look at, well, what are the sort of resources that we can create, especially when...
So, I mean, do we even need money? Could we be doing it in a different way?
Or with an alternative currency or whatever.
Yeah. could we make our own magic money tree rather than just rely on Boris Johnson's magic money tree? I don't know. Okay, Sean. Yep, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, based on what Andy was saying, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, for me, I've had to make my life as an artist, but the art itself is a form of expression, and that's why I think it helps our minds as well, because it helps us to take what's in our head and formulate it into something, and that's a way of letting go. And unfortunately, you know, from the basis of that, it's not necessarily about money. It's about an expression. It's about a form and something to give, but it's not necessarily always about money. So that's where the basic argument can come into it.
Is the money thing, does that, when we make it about money, does that change our values and we just get sucked into this capitalist, consumerist sort of way?
I think it does. I think it does, especially if you're talking about celebrity, because people hook onto personality, and depending on who they are, they might try to hook onto an alter ego that they see in another artist, and that's why they might like that person and invest in that, because they're like, I want to see this person do that.
Yeah, so they're kind of almost projecting their desires onto this super successful celebrity. Ariana, what's your point?
My point is kind of apropos of nothing and everything at the same time. I was just wanting to bring up the idea of social practice or socially engaged artworks with communities being a good outlet for kind of marrying therapeutic purposes with creative ones. And in response to something Thomas raised about the images needing more explanation, I did a workshop with mothers with mental health and their young children at the South London Gallery. It's an ongoing thing, and they have different artists lead these sessions. And I found that experience, like, one of the best outcomes was that several of the women said that having engaged with it changed their whole perception of what art is and what creativity is, and recognizing that they can be creative, even if they were told maybe they weren't good at art when they were kids or whatever it was that kind of made them think, oh, art's not for me.
Ariana, is it about the information that's lacking, or is it about some kind of, as you were saying before, about confidence to be part of that?
Yeah, it's I think, you know, I think that's why I'm bringing up social practice, because it's like a way of making, making artists' tools accessible to people from different communities and different backgrounds. So it's through the actual act of participating in something or trying something out, as opposed to just learning in a lecture, kind of, this is what this is.
Okay, so it's a much kind of more juicy way of getting involved.
Practical learning as opposed to just kind of lecturing learning, but it could include a bit of that. Like, I'm sure I showed examples of my own work or other artists' work that was relevant to what we were doing. Yeah.
Okay, now talking about participation, I just want to now say we've got quite a few people online. No pressure, people, but you've been listening. We want to hear from you. You may not be an artist, you may not be a practitioner, you might be just my mum, for example, but you've all got something to say. So please do also raise your hand or attract my attention if you want to say something, because we want to hear from all of you. And the other thing to say is, how can this be turned, because we want, it's a bit unusual for Talkaoke, but we want to sort of develop this proposal, maybe not today, maybe next week, but we want to, how can this actually be turned into some kind of proposal for a practice or for an intervention or for an artwork? And even in the most kind of fantastical way, how can we do that? That's a question that goes out there. Margot, you wanted to say something?
I did. It was something, I'm trying to remember, somebody was saying about, I think Ariana, you were talking about access to the arts. I mean, one of the things that came up last month, was that there are like cultural barriers and perceptions of what mental health is, and consequently, well, not consequently, but alongside of who the art is for and who is it by. And I think people of like minority ethnics and that kind of stuff, they sometimes don't feel like maybe they can participate in it. I think that art plays a really good, very important role in introducing people to new concepts, not just from minority groups, just in general, but that's been identified as a barrier.
So art can be a connector in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And for everybody new who joined, is everybody aware of the raise your hand?
Raise your hands.
Raise your hand, not in live. I mean, you can do it in live. You can do it
to be honest, Margot, it's a lot easier to see this thing on a list of people than to try and watch, because I'm watching like 30 people now. I can't see all the raised hands, but I can see the virtual hands that are raised. So
exactly. So please make use of the virtual raised hand facility, and you will find it at the bottom of your screen where you hover over participants. We've got 26 participants right now, some of them in pairs like Adelina and the mystery man. So just click participants, and at the bottom of the participants list, you'll see raise hand, lower hand, yes, no, and other functions which we haven't used, and I don't know how they work. So
okay, so just to sum up, we're kind of talking about this kind of, in a way, it's come out of this idea of this kind of global anxiety, the anxiety of society. Creative practices have got such a useful kind of role to play there, but are we really kind of getting the most out of that? Are we actually really are we really benefiting from the creativity of individuals, artists, or not? So there's some of the questions there, and we've got also Rick visualizing some of these things. As I said, I want to just encourage anyone, if you just want to say something, it doesn't have to. We've had a lot of very clever comments so far, very learned and very experienced, wise comments. That can sometimes put people off, but my view, and I strongly believe everyone has got something to say on this. So don't let any of that, the quality of the conversation put you off, because everybody's point is important. Kane, what are you going to say?
It was just to come back to Oriana's point. I'm just thinking now at the moment where organizations like yourself are thinking about how you reach a digital audience, is how through socially engaged practice online, you can make sure you're reaching those groups who are probably most isolated and least likely to be maybe connecting through digital means. It's just a question. How do you?
Is it really possible?
Yeah, I think it probably is, but I think in the same way that if you are working with a specific hard to reach group, you need those referral pathways. You need to be doing the same things, just looking at ways in which it's the balance between physical and digital.
What is a referral pathway?
Oh, like if you're working, if you're wanting to reach an elderly audience, working with a cluster of care homes, for example.
Right. Okay. So just getting out there and doing
yeah. Sorry, it was a wanky way of saying it.
Well, not everyone maybe knows the jargon. So
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a thumbs up there as well. That's good.
Just because my wave function isn't there. So
you haven't got the wave.
No, so I have to do a thumbs up.
Yeah. Okay, Claire, come on. What have you got to say?
About visualizing some of the concepts, and I'm not sure what you've got in mind for the intervention. I've only just joined today, but one of the ideas was the National Art Service.
Yeah.
And it's just a really good idea, and also it fits in sort of with the institution of the police and things.
Yeah.
And I personally would like to have a go at just mocking something up. And I don't know how other people would visualize it. Would you literally draw like an art GP, an art nurse, art psychotherapist? I just wondered what people.
Okay. The National Art Service, what would it look like? It's a very good question. And would it be like the sort of GP? Would it take ages to get an appointment at the National Art Service, or would you have a same-day appointment? I don't know. These are some of the questions that you guys can come up with, can answer here. But that's a great way, I think, to actually visualize this. The National Art Service, what would it look like? Would it have the same sort of logo as the NHS, NAS? Let's get a bit more creative here and help Rick's beavering away. I can see him in the background, socially isolating from me. But I can see him working away. So, you know, he needs some help here. So yeah. Okay. Is there a raised hand? There's a raised hand from Kieran. I can't see you though, Kieran. Oh, you're over here. There you go.
I see you, but your views changed rather a lot. I like the side view of you, by the way.
Okay, I can go back to side view, no problem. I've got 2 videos. There we go.
Quite intimidating otherwise. No. I was going to say, because I work in a charity which sort of basically employs as volunteers lots and lots of people with mental health problems or age, you know, like they're past retirement, and none of them are set up on computers. And in some ways, that's the crisis, because they can't participate in this, and they're the ones that need it the most. That was their only point of contact in coming there. And I think
right. So you've closed down your centre, obviously, because of coronavirus.
Yeah, but in a way, they're disconnected anyway from this world already, like the arts and everything. But this really raises it, and if this goes on and on for weeks and weeks, and you know, into months, I think it's an imperative that people somehow can go around there and set them up on stuff so they can do it, because they don't even know how to barely turn on a computer, half of them, and they've got things, they just don't know how to use them.
Okay, so the National Arts Service needs to make an emergency call in a way.
We need to set them up with the basics first, a bit like the minimum income, really. We need a few basic level of infrastructure.
Yeah, let me bring in Mal to this, because I know there's some other people that got their hands on, but I want to prioritise people that haven't spoken yet. So Mal, welcome. Let me just unmute you, because I don't think somehow you're going. What have you got to say?
Hi guys, yeah, just referring to this point, I just feel like exactly to gain digital audience, you need to make sure they have the right equipment, and that's not going to be as possible as for everyone. The same is with education now online, and the children who might not necessarily have the right equipment. And I think it's important to say that. But if you wanted to expand help, if you wanted to expand help, you would literally need to use the volunteers who are in person with the people and who are delivering, for example, food. And that is something that I think is more than just delivering food. It could be an art form, or just you just look at Italians who are singing in the balcony.
Okay,
and,
so should we be doing emergency supplies of culture to these people that are really cut off? Okay, Lucy had her hand up, but now it's gone down again, so I'm going to go to Margot. Sorry, Lucy, we didn't come to you in time, and it's gone. But Margot, what is it?
Yeah, actually, Mal just articulated it right there. But I was just wondering, you know, we all kind of like meeting on Zoom now, which I'm, by the way, secretly enjoying, really. But you know, what about people who are, you know, can we, like, what's going to happen next? Because we've managed actually not to talk about the pandemic much, which I think is quite an achievement in itself, considering. But what's going to happen? Are people just going to want to come together a bit more after this pandemic is over, or at least this first stage of it? Or will people want to like isolate further? And, you know, what happens with simple pleasures of reading or doing something that's like, you know, going back to before digital age, to have everybody on the same page? Is that even possible? And I just wonder,
can I just ask people out there, has anyone been doing any reading or like non-internet based stuff that, you know, Rick, what's that, reading?
You can all press yes in the box where you press raise hand. You can do yes or no.
Okay.
I'm curious
who's been reading?
Who's been reading? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yeah, some yeses, some no's. Okay.
Oh wow, you're doing so well. A lot of yeses. Karen, bad. Giacomo, bad.
Okay. Claire, did you want to say something, Claire, or was that just a thumbs up?
I was going to say, the only reason I was reading is because there was a challenge set on Instagram to write a haiku about a book recommendation so that everyone who's isolating can read something. So the internet got me to read again. So
okay, so these things are actually woven in. They're not necessarily against each other. There was a point there from Bence, was there?
Hi, hello everybody. Hi. Yeah, I just want to refer what Margot said. I doubt that, you know, to go back to books, reading books and less digital, reading less on digital or thinking in digital world and coming back to the old way. I think it's highly unlikely unless we would be cut off the electricity.
Mm-hmm. So you think that
because
kind of going backwards?
Anyway, we are so get used to the digital content. If we want to look for something, we can read anything online, even a book. Obviously, I read a lot of books, but I still haven't reached the point that I started reading more than before, because there's still so many things to actually sort out in this new situation.
Yeah.
And also about this other thing, I had this idea that, for example, in my case, I can work from home if but for that, you know, I came across this situation that for example, I realized that the computer I'm using, it's a bit old. What I actually use, I mean, it's my computer at home, it's more older than, and the specification is not as good as what I use at work. So if I want to rejoin in my workforce, in my field, I should invest first time in a very expensive computer.
Right, so you're kind of being shut out just from the lack of equipment in a way.
Yeah, and that's what I started looking for just renting computer, but prices are kind of already start going high, raising. Right. So I don't know, it's a good question about how artists can maintain themselves in this new challenge.
What do you think about the National Art Service as an idea?
I wonder what the National Art Service could do for artists who are working digital, but they just cut off from their work office or studio, and they realize that, wow, actually, you know,
okay,
what could National Art Service do for people like me?
Good question. Maybe Lucy's got the answer, maybe not.
Yeah, I've solved it all, don't worry. No, I haven't, but I was thinking about similar things. We have been at the gallery, and sharing of resources is definitely something that's kind of been has come up from a lot of the people that I've been looking at, and Twitter, and from a lot of the conversations we've been having. And interestingly, with the Mental Health and Justice Project, a lot of the ways people were defining justice was about access to resources, and World Health Organization sort of use that as a defining way of measuring justice. So,
what are the important resources do you think that people maybe haven't got access to?
I don't know. We're still finding it out. I think, and it's shifting a lot. I mean, when we were talking about our program for artists and who we work with, it changes. I think we can't really make assumptions. Some people, I think, are actually coming off line a little bit to protect themselves from an onslaught of information, or some people are perhaps coming online for the first time because they're feeling but the other thing that's really coming out from a lot of the artists we're working with is that, and not all of them, but a lot of them are saying things that make it clear that they're starting to feel the general public is seeing things through their eyes a little bit more. Feelings of isolation, or feelings of actually some people really happy that a lot of what we're doing is moving online, because they're not people that particularly want to leave their house or can leave their house, and now they're feeling like actually the focus is shifting more towards their needs. So it's a really varied thing, but we're listening, and we're hearing a lot of variety out there, that's for certain.
Okay, so in a way we're kind of seeing the world from a totally different perspective, from an isolated perspective, and that isn't actually an insight that maybe none, well, certainly it is for me. Margot, and then come to you, Sean, after Margot.
Sorry, I muted myself for everybody's benefit, but yeah, I just wondered slightly on what Benza was saying about, you know, oh, you don't have the most powerful computer. and maybe you can't do work. But what I've noticed
on Adelina's computer.
On Adelina's computer.
Yeah.
So I've made a kind of like a pact with myself that I'm going to try to undo my digital involvement, because now is the perfect time seemingly. And since the pandemic, measures kind of were implemented, I've not really touched a book, which is terrible. And then somebody said, one of my friends said, well, if we as artists, as creatives, if we just can't like chill out now, take this as a moment to chill out, then when will we? Because essentially we're still creating content, doing this online and this online. It's just a different medium, but there's like a competition online. Who's doing more Zoom meetings? I'm definitely in that competition. I didn't want to be, but and I want, it's like Claire, you were saying, like. So
should it be a chance to chill rather than,
Instagram?
Well, we'll give this meeting a few more minutes, and then maybe people can chill after that. Because.
But final thing that I've heard about.
Sorry.
Just the final thing that I've heard about recently is my friend was saying that their choir had a Zoom practice where they just sat in silence, which just blew my mind, because apparently it just really, people really loved it.
Okay, anything from the chat streams there, Margot?
Yeah, from chat streams, we've got from Asha from South Africa. Whoop, whoop. She's saying that there are frequent power cuts in South Africa, and book and a candle it's not an uncommon scenario. But apparently, she's saying, Margot, we need to remember that some people in South Africa can't read, sad face. They do tell stories and sing, though.
Okay.
And we've got a point from Abby. Perhaps artists, generalizing, have already built up a resilience of sorts in terms of working in isolation. Maybe this is the time to share those ways of resilience.
Okay, yeah. So they've kind of graduated with a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks. So it's time to teach rather than learn. Okay, Sean, let me come to you, and then Kane, then Kieran.
I just wanted to go back a little bit onto the computer thing. I think artists are now forced in competition. These are all like keywords we've heard, to have to be digitally able and have that kind of technological brain. And if you don't, then somehow you don't get employed as much, which I think is terrible, because it's not about how technological you are, but what stories and work you can share. And that's always been a stigma, I think, for people who are finding it hard to be not Instagram friendly or Twitter friendly, etc., etc. But in terms of what I'm going to play devil's advocate and say a broad line kind of statement, I think what you need is based on what you're trying to achieve. So if I'm doing some illustration, I don't necessarily need to be around a lot of people. But if I'm creating a show, I love to do it with 5 people in the room.
Different personality types, and I guess there's something we haven't really talked about. We just kind of assume that all creative people are the same, but there's a huge diversity of personalities that we're trying to encompass here, and they're all got their own issues. So it's a really good point. Let me come to Kane. Oops, I just go on.
National Art Service again. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Just coming back to National Art Service is obviously the NHS's drive for volunteers at the moment, to be in contact with delivering medication to the elderly and others that are having to self-isolate and are most vulnerable, and just whether there's a way of hijacking that system, of artists reaching people through that who can't be reached through digital means.
So you come with a prescription,
like an NHS kissogram,
a little aria as well.
Yeah, it's a prescription and a small concert.
Okay, Kieran, hang on, go on.
You're on mute.
Yeah, just feedback on what Margot was saying. I think there might come the point where you want to sit down and I've got all my journals ready to write up, and I'm going to use this time. But at the moment, I think that it's time to get busy and make sure more of this stuff happens. And I have to say that my confidence in being able to self-isolate, since just doing this for an hour, has raised enormously, because it's something else I don't have to sit here on my own chatting on a phone to one friend at a time. And so I think the efforts that your team, Margot, you, Rick, everyone, is amazing. This is great, and this isn't the time to sit down and start reading yet and do your yoga. It will come, but this is.
Yeah. I have to say, personally, I've not picked up. I've been supposed to be reading this R.D. Laing book, which I thought was relevant to this whole conversation. It was good, but I haven't. The whole crisis has actually stopped me from being able to read, because I'm too anxious now to actually just sit down, and chill out. Do you know what I mean? I can't do that, so I'm not in a situation to read. Okay, where are we going to go with this? And let's also just remember that we are trying to also turn this, with all of our skills and all of our insights together, into some ideas for what could be a practice, whether it's for now, when we're in Corona lockdown, or when we come out of this. What is our proposal here? I want to put that back to you as well, because we have come up with ideas. This National Art Service thing, I think, is great. This idea of the kind of almost like Deliveroo for arias, deliver aria, it might be called, or something like that.
Maybe we need to workshop the name, Mike.
Yeah, we need to workshop the name for sure. But could we have like a Uber Eats but Uber culture or something like that? Do you know what I mean? There was someone cycling around, coming with a piece of culture as well, because you're so locked out of life. So there are ideas, there are emerging. Rick, have you got any illustrations? Okay. Rick's going to come up with some visuals shortly. So where do we want to go with this? So I can see a couple of raised hands. Margot, have you got something?
I think Sean was before me, so let him go.
Okay, Sean?
And Kane, and then Sean, I think, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that maybe we could go with the idea that, hearing earlier on from Thomas about the audio guide, what if someone came to your door with an audio guide that walks you to a story or a place of interest that you've shown on a website? So if you like paintings, there's an audio guide that has clocked where you are and tells you what you'll see on your way until you get to it. Or it could be a play that you see, or a story, or something that's interacted.
So a kind of audio guide that guides you either. I'm just going to go to Andy with the cat there, just because I'm getting distracted by that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay, so some kind of audio guide that is a kind of an imaginative audio guide that actually guides you through an imaginative space. It could also interact with the internet, or it could take you out to an outdoor space. But the idea of this audio guide could actually be quite strong. Andy, is it just about the cat, or is there more to it?
No. I think it's a really interesting idea to think about, sort of like the internet or virtual space as like public space that can be intervened into in the same way that you can in physical space. So, but that thing about, going back to that sort of choir thing, or people just having an anxiety about even going on social media at the moment, sort of like carve out a different type of space or offer a different sort of experience in that world at the moment.
Do
really
we even see the internet as a public space, or is it this kind of like just series of private spaces, one connected to the other? Is there a public space online that is just, or is that Facebook, or is it Instagram, or should there be some other kind of like more public square or something like that out there online?
Forum.
Oh, yeah. Margot, go on.
No, I was just wondering, apropos of the art Deliveroo, and believe me, there's a conversation on the chat going, like trying to propose different names. The workshop is real. But I wonder, about
the deliver oods.
Yeah, isn't that quite niche? We're gonna say.
Yeah, it's a bit niche. Yeah.
But there's, because of so many art venues closing down and people who work on live events, all that being shut down. I mean, I've seen a post on social media saying there are a lot of good project managers and admin people who can support everything that NHS is doing, and they wonder whether it's time to to retrain for artists.
Okay, so should I retrain as what?
Yeah, retrain as I don't know, maybe not doctors, because somebody was saying about doing therapy online or that kind of stuff, and I wonder, this internet being a public space makes everyone an expert on their own thing, and I just wonder whether people will be like giving out wrong advice and having like maybe.
I mean, maybe it could be like a sort of more global training being offered and being taken, rather than just like a training program. We could all train. I'm sure everybody on this chat, whatever you want to call it, has got something they could train people in that would be useful for this moment.
Yeah.
What would you train people in? Yes, you, Margot.
Oh, all right. Like a skill share.
Yeah. What would you do?
I could teach people how to wear a lot of pink all at once. I tried it yesterday. It was really good.
No, but something you're expert in, I'm talking about.
Yeah, I feel quite competent in that, but also I could teach people Polish, I suppose. But this is the thing, as an artist, I feel like I make performance similarly to Sean, and I just feel like maybe I don't have those skills. Like who wants to know how to perform? And also it's such an individual thing anyway. So I think as artists, I think, you know, in the world where art exists in its own bubble, there's a room for art, and we're not living in a state of emergency. That is all fine and well and good, but now, oh hey, I'm just going to be creative online. Is that what we need? I don't know. Do you feel like you've got concrete skills? I mean, I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not an NHS doctor.
I've actually got concrete skills, and I've got a whole load of cement and concrete that I'm actually going to be my neighbour do with his back garden.
No, but you also have a van. You can do like removals in a time of quarantine. You know, it can be competitive, daring artist, and then writing a book about.
Okay, so should I get back in the van? That's what you're saying. Me get back in the van. Okay, Thomas, you haven't said anything for a while, so come into this one.
So I was going to say that I like the idea of the audio tour taking you to different places. So justice is something that happens in different places, and injustice is something that happens in different places and with different people as well. So it could take you to, I don't know, a hospital, an A&E department where someone can be sectioned, for example. It could be on the street where there's a policeman who can hold you under an emergency section there. It could be a courthouse, for example, or a tribunal service. There was the mental health tribunal service is just actually headquartered in London, just around the corner from my office, which is closed at the moment. But anyway, that's where it is.
But we could get these amazing insights into what it's actually like to go through those spaces with this kind of audio tour.
Exactly, and the kind of virtual things like Google Street View and what we're doing now offers us all those kinds of opportunities, because justice is something that is many things to many people and involves many people, and is something that is different.
So you can actually go through. You could actually navigate the streets using Street View and go to these places, and we could set that up. We could do that kind of. We need somebody probably clever that knows how to program this stuff. I don't know, but it's a really good idea to actually use that space and give people those insights. I mean, what I also like about this is how we're all together, and this is the whole purpose of this event. Is it's about people, you know, coming up with the ideas together, and I think it's really starting to happen now. Kieran, what's your point?
I was just going to say that it would be very interesting for this to be quite global. So it'd be interesting to, like kind of stuff you're talking about, you know, but here from an Indian perspective at the moment, a middle-class Indian and then a poor Indian, and, you know, how they're going through it, because like this is a global crisis. And I think that one of the things we're learning is that we're so interconnected, even in our inequality and how it affects us. You know, what's it like to be in a tiny little flat with 10 kids in the Woolworth Road at the moment with tiny windows? I mean, probably awful, but not as bad as India. But anyway, I'm blabbering a little bit. But
but we're getting, I guess, we're getting different insights, and we could certainly go with that, flow with that. Maybe you could have a kind of like an app that kind of gave you 10 virtual kids that you had to deal with all at the same time.
Or just somehow delve into their experience, because at the moment we're just looking at the BBC News and we're getting a 3-minute bit of film, and that's all we get, and we don't really know more. And none of us are reading because we're all searching the internet for more on it. But there's not that much really.
Right. Okay. So we're getting this very media focused perspective, and it can be quite alarming as well, I think, as well. Sean, what's your point?
I just wanted to follow on with this kind of ball of ideas. It's really, really cool. Wondering if at the moment, because we're on Zoom, we can change the backgrounds. What if these walks could happen on the internet, and then have actors and people with scripts about the jobs and stuff, and you have the background. You can do it from your home, but you can give a live interactive.
Yeah, you could do it almost a piece of Zoom theatre. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think people are really wanting experiences in isolation as well.
Mm. Okay, that's a really nice idea as well. And we noticed there's a few people that got some nice backgrounds. I think that's the Scottish National Gallery that Kane's got there.
Yeah.
Let me just, talking about backgrounds, let me just, because there's a few people that have said a lot. Some people haven't said anything at all. People, if you don't mind me saying, such as Giacomo or Will, David, Michaela, Adelina gets away with it. Oh, we've got some images coming through as well now. So let's see what Rick has come up with here. Boris and his money clouds. Magic. It's got quite a magical pose there as well. Dysfunction is a function. There we go. Who's going to sign up? Who's going to volunteer for the National Art Service? And could it be a kind of conscription-based thing? This is kind of like, according to my 50s conscription to me. Okay, is that it for now, Rick? Okay, that's it for now. So we're starting to get some ideas. I sort of feel like people are leaving. Guys, if you're going to leave, just give us a final thought before you go. Because that is really nice sometimes to hear people sum up what have been the interesting things for them in the conversation. So normally when we do this in a physical space, I can just grab hold of somebody's arm and hold on to them and get them to give a final thought before they go. But we've just been losing people without getting those final thoughts. So please do offer a final thought if you're on your way out, if you got something else to do on your busy day. But I do feel like we're getting somewhere.
Pac is saying yes.
What's that?
Could you elaborate on your agreement there, Pac?
Oh, okay, let's bring in Pac to this. Come on, Pac. We haven't heard from you yet. Come on.
No, I didn't really have anything to add, but I was really interested in, was it Kieran's point of view, point about interacting with other people across the world and talking about their experiences, especially during this time when everyone is experiencing something similar, but in different parts of the world and different cultures, and how that, getting an idea of how people are dealing with it as well, I think would be very interesting. Especially
where are you calling from?
I'm in Hong Kong at the moment.
Okay, so maybe that is another different part of the world. Maybe you could just give us a run through on this. I mean, do you think it's different in Hong Kong than it is? I mean, most of the people here are in the UK, not everybody, I don't think, but we've got some French people here as well. And some Italian
I mean, the one big difference I think in Hong Kong versus the UK is that people in the UK have space. You guys have big houses and areas that you can, isolate yourselves. In Hong Kong, everyone lives in a tiny apartment. You have, families of 4 or 5 all crammed into one apartment. And I think the way people here are dealing with it is very interesting. And so far what they've done is, people have actually gone out and rented hotel rooms to kind of get space, and even rent out. The people have created these concepts where they're renting out rooms, almost like an Airbnb thing, but just so that people can get away from their families and isolate themselves away. So, what'd you say?
Oh, there's some kind of interference. There's some kind of background sound coming from somebody's camera. I don't know where it's coming from. But it's interesting what you're saying about people like hiring or renting hotel room apartments. It didn't occur to me. I know that some of my friends, they do run or have run Airbnb businesses, and I think that's suffered as a result of this whole situation. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of chat about a community coming together online or whatever, but I wonder at what point will we be able, we will like, we won't be able to bear the other person's company if we're living in a small space. But yeah, it's good perspective from outside of the UK, because I think for once we're not talking about Brexit, which is a bit positive, I suppose. But yeah, I was quite shocked about people who went out to parks the other day. I guess it's not possible in Hong Kong. Maybe there aren't many parks. Maybe it's something quite telling about British society who don't like control. Anyway, Karen, you've got a point. I don't know why we can't hear Mikey. Mikey, we can't hear you.
Where are you going, Mikey? Oh, well.
Mikey, we can't hear you.
Hi, Pack. It's nice to see you. I don't know if you can hear me. I think I've lost my point completely, to be honest. Oh, yeah, the shacking up with people. It's interesting because a lot of people I know have been running around sort of thinking, well, should I move in with my friend or not? And in the end, we've all came to the same conclusion that there's no way we can share a one-bedroom flat together. We'd rather just be in our own spaces and do stuff like this, because we've never lived together for 12 weeks without being able to leave. And the only ones that are actually up for it are the ones where there's sex maybe involved, and then they're interested. So that seems to be my sort of vox box on that setup, really. That's all.
All right. So unless there are some immediate benefits, forced cohabiting may not be an easy thing to do. But Mikey, we still can't hear you. We literally cannot hear you.
Well, in some ways it makes a change.
Yeah.
And he can't answer back as well, so that must be really annoying for him.
Yeah, it must be terrible. But is there anyone else hasn't made a point that anything that kind of happened that kind of sparked your thoughts in the course of this conversation? Anything from you, Will, maybe?
Hang on, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Oh, boo. Yeah, we can.
I was wondering why people were not getting my jokes. Do you know what I mean?
I don't think that's sound related though, Mikey. It's the quality of jokes as well.
Okay, I sort of feel like we're kind of getting to the end of this now, but I want to get a final thought from everybody. But also, there was a point from Giacomo that was wavering. Giacomo, come on, tell us what you wanted to say.
Hi, Mikey. Thank you for hosting this. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was so interested in listening to all your different thoughts. Thank you for sharing them. Hi from Paris. I'm not an artist myself, but I'm definitely interested in the role that art could play not only at the national level or local level, but also at the global level. I'm thinking maybe in a situation where art could play a role in a post-conflict situation, or in community where there are refugees. So I was thinking maybe if we have the time, Mike, if I can launch just a question, if you had an experience, or what do you think art could bring also in the situation where there are people highly affected by war or by...
I mean, I think it's a very, very good point. And I think it's just only, you know, after doing this 23 years, it's only really now that when we've got a crisis, that you sort of, I suppose, think about how useful creativity and art can be in crisis situations globally. And maybe we can learn from this and have that, you know, deploy the National Art Service, and maybe it could be the International Art Service, going to global crises all around the world. So I think that's a really, really good point. But I have to also put my hand up and say, you know, should we have been actually doing more in and around the world where people really need it? All right, let's get some final thoughts from everybody. Anyone want to be first on the final thoughts? Okay, Claire.
Hi. My thought is just to be proactive. How can we? Like, I would just want to start painting the National Art Service right away. So what's the deadline? What we're going to do?
Okay, let's just get on with it. I mean, we've got another meeting next week. We can deal with the details in between time, and we're going to keep the chat going on Twitter and on Facebook and all the channels, probably mostly on Twitter, I think. Is that right, Margot?
Yeah, Twitter and Facebook as well.
Yeah, and we're going to keep the chat going. And we can develop these ideas over until next week, where we really want to just hone this down. But I think you're absolutely right. We could just start this.
I like the unicorn.
Just as a final thought for you, Claire, what does it look like for you, this National Arts Service? What would be the sort of some of the points about it?
I'm going to ask my boyfriend, who's a scientist, what are the main things, like the issues,
right,
that we think about with the NHS at the moment, and then try and think what the art equivalent would be.
Okay, so you're going to do a bit of actual research. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And come back to us. That's really great. I hope you can make it for next week. Okay, anyone else final thoughts or initial thoughts from people like Will that's not said anything yet? Which is really unusual. Will, you got a final stroke initial thought?
It is unusual for me not to be talking, but I'm just enjoying hearing everyone's ideas at the moment. I think one positive to take from what I've heard from people is that although some normality or structure might have disappeared from lives, it's unleashed everyone in a way to be quite creative that maybe they weren't before. So it's nice to see, I know Margot was talking earlier about everybody's individual creativity and how personal it is to them. So it's really nice to see that start to flourish and people that perhaps weren't as creative before starting to be creative. So I think something like a National Arts Service would have loads of interest from people. Don't know about the conscription part, that might throw up a couple of barriers, but apart from that, I think you're onto a winner.
I've got a point as well. I'm just thinking that I like a lot of illustration, and people tend to do Sketchtember in September, and every day they're meant to do a sketch. And I was wondering if every day we have a key word that we put out to everybody, and they have to do a artistic response.
Okay.
And then we have a platform where they can post their results to.
So it's a kind of artistic call and response kind of thing.
Yeah, but it can be for everyone, not just artists. Just everyone can have.
How would you choose the words?
Say again?
How would you choose the words?
I think we'd try and create a random kind of word generator, but that has to do with things that people are currently experiencing.
It could be some sort of artificial intelligence that's kind of like gets the words that are being the themes for the day and use that, or the themes from the day before.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get final thoughts. Final thought. Is this your final thought, Margot? I doubt it.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to suggest a way of generating random words. AI is one way of doing it, but I recently hosted a Zoom game of categories, and people came up with all sorts of weird and wonderful things. So I think we can provide the randomized word selection as human engines. But my final point is that I don't have a final point, but if you enjoyed bits of this conversation, please tweet us and share on Facebook, because we are coming back in next week. But yeah.
Same time next week, we're going to be trying to hone some of these ideas down, and maybe there'll be more in the conversation in between. Lucy, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's interesting that the whole language of war is coming back into the conversation. I had an artist on the phone flag that up with me the other day, and she was finding it hard that we were talking about doctors being redeployed to the front line and stuff like that. And I think a lot of artists would really resist that language coming into the chat about the National Arts Service, so we'd have to watch that. I'd also say I'd challenge the idea of sort of arts on prescription, that's also teetering into sort of art therapy land, and I know from working with people that I do that sometimes the idea of sort of enforced dance classes and stuff like that doesn't always go down too well. So you'd have to think carefully about that too.
Well, I mean, I think there's two things here that we sort of touched on. One was this idea of a kind of, as you say, like delivering with the pharmacy kind of idea, which is art on prescription. But there's also this kind of Deliveroo, Uber Eats.
Yeah.
Kind of, you know.
That's art at the point of watching, that's all right.
Just Eat, you know, could it be Just Beats? That's what Kane said on the chat. Or, where you actually you dial in your culture rather than it being something that's pushed on you. It's something
it's not It's not leafleted into your letterbox. Yeah.
I think just going back on that, I think that's a very good point you make there, Lucy. I think where my mind of enjoying the soldiers with paintbrushes came from was the idea of actually getting people the good things of national service, of actually getting people outside, getting them learning how to be in their bodies, how to make fire, how to survive, all those basic things, rather than suggesting that it's leaning in towards war. Yeah. I think it's more that kind of idea of how can we be a team to solve something out, and then how can you use art to steady the mind? So like color by numbers, that kind of stuff, you know, just little kind of tempting tidbits to people.
Okay, was it Kane? Have you got final thought? Kane?
Yeah, no, I was just apart from, you know, my brilliant suggestion about setting up Deliveroo for
it's a bit niche though, isn't it? To be
honest, it's the only thing that I could get to work when it came to a fund. I do think that, you know, the GP art prescription does exist.
Yeah, but I mean, is it kind of like, I think the question that Lucy put, is it too literally prescriptive, when you want people to be a bit more generative and a bit more kind of self-creative and you know, rather than having, you know, like you need to do at least 10 dance moves a day kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I guess it's just trying to think of all the options that are available, from, you know, the NHS prescribing to volunteering for the NHS to, you know, Deliveroo. You know, I think it's just thinking of ways of getting out there.
We just run with Deliveroo because there's nothing like a great pun. Is there? Just to keep a whole.
I just shout out to our British Centre that are doing Oud classes online. If you're thinking of taking up that skill now,
so Deliveroo is already happening.
It's already happening. I don't think it's called that though.
Yeah, well then.
Maybe you should suggest. It seems.
I will off the back of this.
Okay. Anyway, Kieran, what's your point?
Well, I think it's interesting how what's considered essential is expanding every day. So we just got bikes and mechanics that are back on the list, whereas they were. They've realised how brilliant it is. And then now you've got your art idea that this could be a vital service. But my favourite that went on the list today, completely off subject really, is that off licenses are now back on the list. Yeah.
Really?
As essential.
I didn't realise they were off the list. I've been frequenting that off license. Anyway, but that's happening for you.
In East London, where everyone's breaking rules because they're all artists.
Yeah. Okay. So there's something about rules and breaking the rules. Okay. Let's get some final thoughts from those people. People like Andy, David. I think you haven't said anything, but hopefully you've been listening. Michaela, Oriana, we didn't get final thought from you yet. Andy, we haven't got final thought from you yet.
I've got mine on the chat.
Hang on, let's go to Andy. Final thought. Yeah.
I just think the platform's been really well used today and facilitated. I was dead interested to see how Talkaoke would work as a Zoom thing, but it's really, it's a nice thing to take part in. I suppose it's quite hard for you to sort of like keep a tab on absolutely everyone that's involved, but you've done it's been great to be part of it.
And I've been sort of making eye contact with people, just saying, you know, I've got you. Let me just change I've got you. I do my I normally do this thing. It's like, you know, I got you. But it doesn't work online because I'm just staring at
everyone.
So it's like one-way eye contact. But you know, there's a few teething problems here we can iron out here.
I like it.
But yeah, I mean, it's great as well for me to interact because I miss you guys. Is that it for the final thought for now? Keep thinking, Andy.
Yeah, for now. I think the things that are getting brought up around, I guess, just providing a support network, not just for artists, but for other people that might need care in times of isolation, that bridges like digital and physical space, I think is great. I think like a little sort of pack of ideas for people to kind of, you know, I mean, those things need to be quite sort of specific to the communities that they go into and kind of make sense for them rather than just like a generic thing. But I think if there was a sort of like toolkit that could be sort of dropped off. I really love the idea of it. Yeah, kind of creating some calm for people.
Okay, we've got Oriana. Final thought.
David had a hand up, and now he put his hand down. So I don't know.
Shall we just give David a chance to come in there because he's a new person? David? Is he there? Are you there? You're muted. Let me unmute you.
Oh, I'm mute.
No,
yeah.
You're there. Hello.
Hello. Very interesting. I've been listening quite for the last 30 minutes or 40 minutes this week. Very nice. Thank you. I'm not showing my pictures because I don't feel like being seen for the moment.
No problem.
Thank you.
What's your final thought?
My final thoughts. Yeah, we should carry on and basically keep yourself inside and stuff like that. Yes, all good. So about that.
Okay, thanks for joining in. It's nice to hear you, Oriana.
My final point is I'm just wondering. I know you said that you thought that this group was diverse or something at the beginning. There was, we've got a good diverse group, and I'm just I don't know if it is such a diverse group. So I'm just wondering, yeah, what could be done to increase the diversity of the group?
Who would you like to see coming in? And could you help? Could you help us get a more diverse group?
Sorry.
Who would you like to see, and could you help us bring in those people?
I don't know. I don't know how to do that. I can try. I mean, I can try, but yeah, I just think, yeah, I think it's kind of probably, yeah, we're probably speaking to a specific demographic of people. Just judging from the faces. I mean, there's obviously a couple, a few that are departing from the norm maybe, but yeah, I'm not sure, but I don't know how to answer my own question. It's just a kind of.
Okay, well, we've got other people there that might want to answer the question, so it's not just you. Let's just get some final. Michaela, have you got a final thought? Are you there? Oh, you're muted as well, Michaela. Hang on.
Can I just say though, I think it's been great. I don't want to be like just totally negative. I think it's been really good, and I'm really.
No, I don't think anyone for a second thought you were negative at all, to be honest. And and I think it's a really good point. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But at the same time, we've all got to answer that question, and it is a question. But there's two questions: who do we want to see in the virtual room, and also how do we get those people in the room?
I've got a point. Like for instance, people like my mum.
Yeah.
It should be
well,
great.
I've got my mum here.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we could hear from the representation of mums in this world. But I was trying to go through the Zoom setup with my mum, and I remembered how frustrating it is. Equally, I think her point, just to get somebody who's not digitally savvy onto the platform. Yeah. But I think that would be good. And also maybe it's about expanding their platform as well, and maybe having phone calls or something people can't feed in on Zoom.
People can. That's a good point. We can actually we could easily do that. Have a phone in. Next time we'll come with a mixer.
Oh my God, phone in will be so ace.
We can do a phone in. We can actually sort of like. Yeah, you can actually phone in on Zoom, but I think it's all US numbers from what I could tell. But we could do a phone in through our mixer, no problem. So there are ways of doing it, and other platforms we could bring in that we're going to do for next time. We didn't really have enough time this time to do that. So yeah, we can expand the platforms for sure as a way of increasing diversity. Michaela, did you have something? Because I was going to you before Margot interrupted. Do you have a final thought? Oh, I'm trying to unmute you, but yeah. Okay, let me just go then to my mum. Mum? Straight. Jill, have you got a final thought?
All I can say is well done.
Oh, thanks.
And it is very difficult for more experienced people to get onto Zoom.
Okay, but you managed to do it.
I had a lot of help.
Yeah, you had a bit of help. Okay.
Yeah.
I should also say as well, I'll just mute you actually. To say as well, we are out there online for almost an hour before the meeting. So if people, you know, if you want to bring people in next time, just say to them, you know, we can have a little play with setup beforehand, or just put in on the chat questions. Margot's there to help as well, how to work these machines. Okay, any other final thoughts? I see a few raised hands here. Kieran, you got a final thought? Is that? Hang on, let me unmute you. Hang on, yeah, go on. Kieran? Say it again. Oh.
Both unmuting each other, sorry. Yeah, all right. When you do it, I do it, then we cancel each other out. Oriana's gone, but I just wanted to say, I think probably the diversity is all the people not talking more, because, you know, whatever, like your mum came on and she represents another demographic, but she hasn't said very much. So probably from your perspective, it's more diverse. But the other thing is that just doing this, I mean, fuck knows how, because I couldn't barely get this online myself today, but I'm going to try and set up a few Zoom groups for slightly different demographic, possibly for some of our clients at the charity I work for. If they're set up, let's just get them online and do it. So, you know, this has spurred 100 seeds, I think.
Okay, excellent. Is that it? Any other final thoughts? I've got to keep it really brief now. Final thought, very quick one, Giacomo.
I just wanted to thanks. It's such a wonderful idea. And what I get out from the conversation is that really what is important is also facilitating an enabling environment to have this manifesto, this initiative set up. But I think the environment is there. We just have to bring more people around the table and continue the conversation. And it's great that you're doing it in a participatory way, taking inputs from everyone. And I'm sure it will develop very, very strongly, and I look forward to the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Kane, final last point.
Oh, no, I didn't have any additional. Sorry, I just forgot to put my hand down.
Well, that just leaves me. You could have said something like, I'm looking forward to the next session that we're going to do next week, same time, 12 o'clock. Next week, and we're going to try and progress some of the ideas. We're going to focus more on the ideas of what we can actually do, and I think that's a very good point from Claire, that let's just focus on what we can actually do. Rick, have you got any final images? Let's just have the final images, or we'll go through all of the images from Rick before we ring off on this one. So this is kind of like the mental health audio tour. This is kind of like being John Malkovich, being Life of Brian.
Or being all like Rick.
Yeah, Rickovich. Yeah, don't worry, it all makes sense to me anyway. Okay, well, that's it for now, but we're going to be working on this all week. So thanks, everyone, for taking part. And at least we can say to Oriana, we've got more individuality than there is in this picture here. So more diversity than that. But, you know, we're all really good questions. And thank you so much, everybody. It's been a real pleasure to hear from everybody. And it's certainly helped with my mental health. We'll keep the chat going on all the channels. And we'll see you next week.
Yep. See you next week, and tweet and Facebook everyone about it, so we get even more diverse conversation next time. So good to see everyone. Yay!
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.